everyone. Nice to see you, meet you. My name is Michaela Musilova. I'm currently inside the habitat, the high seas habitat. You can see I'm in the lab, hiding away from my crew members who are in different parts of the habitat. Morning here on the moon during our
Hmm.
mission. So I just escaped for a little bit to be able to talk to you, but then we have some EVAs to go on in a little bit. So, but it's a pleasure to be with you all.
Yeah, fantastic. So, Julio, I'll kick straight in and start sharing the slides
Yeah,
and sharing our story, etc. Let's test that
yes.
out.
Now you are the host, okay, and then it's possible you share your screen as well. Yeah,
Right.
wonderful.
Is that working at your end?
Yes, it's correctly operating, and then
Okay.
you can start.
Yeah, fantastic, wonderful. Yeah, so this is our topic that we want to share with you, and it's all about passing on all the the research, the concepts, the successes, etc., the advice from analog space habitat research directly to K-12 STEM students. And what we want to try and cover today, we'll give you a little introduction, obviously, into ourselves and our work, but we want to talk about how humanizing STEM education is really essential to broaden its appeal to as many students as possible. We want to talk about what's the process look like, taking analog habitats into K-12 education. I want to talk about the impact of that and then future plans. But let's switch over to you now, Dr. Michaela, if you want to jump in, tell us a bit about your story, obviously your background, and yeah, how this connects to what we're talking about.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the introduction. So just quickly about me, I'm an astrobiologist. Currently my main job, put it that way, is I'm the director of the high seas facility. So that's the dome structure you can see in the picture here. I'll talk to you more about this in a moment. So briefly about me, my background is in geology, astrophysics. You can see some pictures from those times. And as an astrobiologist, I specialize in life in extreme environments. I've done research in various Arctic environments and also during analog missions. You can see in the orange spacesuit in the picture on the slide here, I was at MDRS as well on a couple of missions as commander. I've worked for NASA and I'm still working with NASA these days. But now my main work is here in Hawaii, directing missions at high seas, but I've also now taken part in over 20 analog missions at high seas myself. As commanders. So it's kind of really being in the job or part of it. I'm also involved with the International Space University. I'm a faculty member there. And I'm originally from Slovakia, and there I function as a visiting professor at Slovak Technical University, and I'm vice chair of SOSA, which is something like Slovakia's equivalent of NASA. So you can see me in the top right picture with our first Slovakian satellite. And so back to where I am right now. So I'm actually in the high seas station right now. We're doing an analog lunar mission. So quickly about the facility, if you're not familiar with it, thank you for the slide. This is what the inside of the habitat looks like. It's a panorama picture, the picture on the left. So it looks a little bit more spacious than it is. It's only about 12 meters in diameter. So it's a bit wider than the Mars Desert Research Station habitat. But overall, in terms of area, they're about a similar size because we don't have a separate building for the greenhouse or a science laboratory or an observatory. So definitely full perks of MDRS. And the important thing is that it's a space shared by 6 people. If you look at the picture, you'll see we have some desks on the right. And then right next to it, this open area is basically where everyone exercises. But right next door is a kitchen and a dining area. So you have to be really adaptable and learn to live with a lot of noise, a lot of people around you, very little privacy. There are cameras everywhere, and our little bedrooms look like the one that I'm sitting in there in the picture. That was when I was going to be part of an 8-month long mission. So you see, I had a couple of things with me, and it was quite tight in there. So it's really, we look for people that are good team players, adaptable, know how to communicate well, and just deal with these kind of less comfortable conditions, put it that way. Next slide, please. The food we eat on these analog missions is all freeze-dried, so either in the form of powder, you can see in the top part of the picture, or these kinds of granules. I joke that it's something like dog food if you look at the pictures on the right-hand side. If you're unfortunate and you have a bad cook on the crew, the chicken and beef, the only difference is the color. So those are the two things you can see on the right-hand side. And the main meal will become this kind of mush you can see in the pot in the middle. But if you have good chefs on the mission, you will forget that you're eating freeze-dried food. Next slide, please. This is quickly just about water. So we have very little amount of water that crew members can use on missions. Usually we encourage each crew to only use 100 gallons of water for 2 weeks. So it means that most people don't shower during the mission. We do these bucket washes you can see in the picture on the right-hand side to preserve as much water as possible. People take bucket showers where you barely fill up that red bucket you can see there, and you only shower maybe once a week, depending on if you were doing some toilet cleanup, for instance. So things like that, water, food, electricity, and other commodities we're used to in our everyday life are actually very precious on these missions. Next, please. The whole time, all these analog astronauts are monitored by people in a mission control center, which is also on the same island, big island of Hawaii. You can see me in the picture on the left. When I was the Capcom or flight director for that particular mission, we can see their life support systems, how much electricity, water, and so on they have available, whether the CO2 levels in the habitat are getting high, and we give them warnings to be more careful. We also have different tech support on site in case of any issues or any emergencies, if there's a power outage or other problems. And we have a lot of volunteers all around the world that help us, which we're very grateful for. If you are interested in helping out as volunteers, please let me know. We're always looking to recruit more people and train them. Next slide, please. And so with mission control, we can change the type of mission that people are on. So currently we're on a lunar mission. There's only about a 2-second delay each way in communication, which is why I can be here with you right now. When we do Mars mission, there's a 20-minute each way delay that we impose on all communications. So to give you an example, in the case of an emergency, it would take at least 40 minutes for you to get help back from Earth. And so obviously that is very inconvenient if it's an emergency. So that's why we train the crews on the Mars analog missions to be as independent as possible so that they are not reliant on help from Earth all the time. Of course, if it was to be a life-threatening emergency, we have special protocols for that. It's a different story. Next slide, please. One of the reasons why the High Seas facility in this area is so special is because it's located on a volcano, approximately 2,500 meters high up, or 8,200 feet. So there's almost no vegetation around us. If you look at the pictures, it's all basically lava terrain. We have interesting skylights and lava tunnels, lava tubes, which are these caves you can see in the pictures here. And they're very interesting for 2 reasons. For a Mars mission, they're interesting from an astrobiology perspective. If you look at the pictures on the bottom of the slide, you can see this kind of white powder and other interesting shapes and forms. Some of these are created by microbes, others are created geochemically. So we're trying to understand this so that if we find similar materials on Mars, when we will eventually start looking underground, we would be able to understand if those are alien life forms that are creating these kinds of materials or whether that was just made geochemically. So it helps us from an astrobiology perspective. Also, as you can see in the picture on the right-hand side, these caves are actually very big. One of them could fit the entire habitat inside. So for lunar analog missions, they're being studied by space architects as potential places for habitats to be built on the moon itself. So that's some of the research that we do here. I see there's some questions coming through. If you don't mind, I might wait until the end to answer them. Hope that's okay. Next slide, please. And our missions at High Seas are very much also focused on the human factors. So we do a lot of physiological, psychological, and sociological research. Here are some examples. If you look at the pictures on the left-hand side, you can see we're all wearing these, they're called mood sweaters. And so they change depending on how we're feeling. The sensors are in the palm of our hand because that's an area that supposedly as humans we cannot influence. We can't stop ourselves from sweating there if we're nervous, for instance, and a lot of other feelings are channeled through there. And so if you look at the picture on the bottom left, we're doing some weird acrobatic exercise. It was a team building exercise we had to do, and we're all really focused, so all our colors are blue. And whereas in the picture on the top left, you see different crew members have different colors, and basically pink is kind of happy, orange is excited, but the white one means that you're agitated. So it helps us as a team to understand how everyone's feeling, and it's trying to increase our empathy so we can communicate better and be more empathetic. You know, perhaps someone is going through a difficult situation, or they're in a bad mood, or whatever. And from a physiological point of view, on every mission, you have to exercise for at least 30 minutes every day. And sometimes your exercises are prescribed for you, and they try and see, you know, what works better for each person. So they measure how much water we drink, how much food we eat related to our exercise, how our volume of air we breathe changes as well. Next slide, please. And then very briefly, to give you ideas of other research we do also a lot of medical emergency simulations. So here you can see it was a simulation where one crew member on EVA had an injury, and then the other crew members had to safely take them back to the habitat through the difficult lava terrain. It was a very heavy exercise to do because the person is much heavier with all the EVA equipment. And so you see that ended up putting the person on a little trolley in the bottom right picture that they pulled them with. So that's one of the types of research we do here. Next slide, please. These are also some space architectural projects we do here, where, for instance, in this one, the space architects covered the entire habitat in black and white colors to see how sensitive humans are to color and how much they will miss color when they're not exposed to it. And indeed, after a week of being only in black and white conditions, some crew members were starting to get really agitated, and they literally ripped off the white paper coverings of the walls as soon as they could. So that was an interesting thing to study. Next slide, please. And then we also test many types of different technologies, rovers, in situ resource utilization technologies, robots, and so on and so forth. So it's a great place inside the habitat, but also outside to test technologies relevant to going both to the moon and Mars. Next slide, please. And finally, the topic that we're talking about today, we also do a lot of outreach and educational work. Here are just some examples of, we had different film crews come to the habitat recently. This documentary / comedy came out called Space Drop. It's available on Amazon Prime, but also on Vimeo, which is meant to show the human side of going on a space mission, whether someone who doesn't have a space background could be part of this, and what would life look like on a very first settlement on the moon or Mars. So that's some of the stuff we do. And then we do a lot of work with students. Next slide, please. This is an example of a competition that I ran in Slovakia called Mission to Mars. It was designed primarily for high school students, but I'm trying to open it up to different age categories as well. And the idea was that students and teams all across Slovakia had to design an experiment, and the best experiment that won, I would take on an analog mission with me and complete for the students that won. Next slide, please. And so here are some examples of the different type of experiments the students came up with. You can see there were some kind of more technological experiments on the left-hand side, some medical ones on the bottom picture, and then some kind of more biochemical, if you will, in the top right picture. So various really amazing experiments have been designed by high school students over the years. Next slide, please. Then we also do a similar program here in Hawaii called the STARS program, targeting primarily high school girls to get involved in STEM subjects, but we open up similar programs to all young people. And then the following slide, thank you, is an example of one of the experiments that I took to the Mars Desert Research Station, also designed for this competition. If you look on the pictures on the right-hand side, you see me working with some very pink-looking stuff. It's an experiment that was designed to grow spinach very quickly in hydroponic conditions with special type of lighting that the students designed as well. And then at the end of the 2-week mission at MDRS, we were able to have spinach as our last supper. You can see in the picture on the bottom left. That was the crew I was commander of, crew 173 at MPRX in 2017. Next slide, please. And this is another example of an experiment we did here at High Seas, where crew members, if you look on the bottom right picture, donated hair, including myself. And then students designed an experiment where the hair was dissolved to create fertilizer, which is the brown liquid that I'm holding in the glove in the picture. And we used that to fertilize soils to grow some spinach and other salad leaves for the crew as well. So really interesting and clever experiments done by students. And I just got the go ahead to continue with this competition. So I'm hoping to bring many more such experiments here. And I'm very grateful that I can work with STEM Punks as an advisory board member, and we've been doing some projects as well here. Next slide, please. So maybe I'll leave the word to you now, Jonathan.
Wonderful. Of course, you know, if we had time, we'd probably ask Michaela about what did the spinach taste like, etc. But let's keep moving on. Thank you so much for that overview. That gives us like such a great idea about, you know, the reality of being of your work, but being in a habitat. Now, me myself, I've been in education for about 20 years. So I don't have a traditional space industry background, but really fascinated by how space can fire students' imaginations. And I have a connection with the Mars Desert Research Station myself, a small one, where I actually got to meet online members of the crew 173, and that include Michaela and the crew that were eating the spinach. Actually, as one of the members was an Australian, Dr. Richard. Yeah, and then I got to visit the MDRS for a day as well, and really came away inspired by you know, how can we connect students, and I'm talking about students in K-12, so elementary, primary school, and high school as well. How can we connect students with that? So yeah, we'll go through this sort of this 4-part story then about doing that connecting. And the first one that's really important for me is the idea of humanizing STEM education. That's something that I have been very passionate about, and STEM Punks, who I work with as well, I have that mission, I guess, by focusing on the real problems, real world problems, not technology or science in isolation. And for me, you know, as I was saying, you know, what could be more inspiring than the idea of, you know, us actually going out to explore into space. And the first stage of that, what it looked like was me here in Australia, and I also got to do this in the USA, but actually going into schools and running these workshops. And I have a drama teacher background, so we did a lot of role play, and we had space objects and VR. We also had a lot of input into these sessions from Mars Society members here in Australia. So we had people like Dr. Jonathan and Dr. Guy Murphy, people who've been on missions who could actually Skype in and talk to the students. And I'll never forget, we had one of them Skype in one day, and we had some Year 9 boys. And I don't know if you remember what high school was like, the Year 9 boys can be a bit annoying kind of stage. And the very first question that was asked of our Mars Society expert was, you know, will we have Wi-Fi on Mars so that we can play Fortnite? Classic Year 9 boy question. But actually, when we got into it, it turned out to be a fascinating question, because it's really about that desire. I mean, we want to connect with our friends. Will we be able to do that on Mars? Will we be able to play games together? And even though it seemed like a bit of a typical teenage showing off question, actually behind that, yeah, there was this real human element. We have some seeds, radish seeds, that have been to the ISS as well via an organization called Space Nation. We got the students by the end of these sessions to take all their new knowledge and start designing what would Mars need first if it's going to be a place where kids would actually be happy to live. What would that be? That might be a type of sport that can work in Mars gravity, or all kinds of things that the students came up with in these face-to-face sessions. And then this year, 2020, I guess the next stage has been very much about, well, we need to do this online. We need to find a way for students to be able to experience this, you know, by logging in at home. And so that's really been what we've been working on this year. And it's been fantastic to connect further with Dr. Michaela. And she's had this really influential video that she made for our students. And this year, rather than just focusing on Mars, we gave the students a choice of anywhere in the solar system. And the question of, what would a habitat need to look like if humans were going to be happy living away from Earth? We let the students choose the location. Could be Luna, could be Mars. Is still very popular, but then all kinds of other places throughout the solar system. And Michaela's video basically talks about, okay, what, like her key advice to the students. And we'll have a look at some pictures of the student designs later, and they always listen very closely and then try and incorporate her advice into the designs that they make. I've also been really privileged through Space Nation also to have a really inspirational video from Colonel Greg Johnson, who's a former shuttle pilot. Just really gets the students in the zone so that their designs, are really, really much richer. And then as part of that, like involving Dr. Michaela even more, actually, I'll let you talk about this one, Dr. Michaela.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was really grateful to Jonathan's input because we're hoping to get as many young people, but generally the general public all around the world involved with some of our missions. And so we asked people to ask questions for the crew, anything they want to know what our mission is like. And Jonathan kindly spread the word to a number of his students and other people he knows for the STEM Punks network. And we got a lot of amazing questions back. And so the whole crew took turns answering those questions. And then we prepared them for the public and posted them on social media. And we'd love to do many more such incentives. I was very, very happy that we had this kind of communication from the moon to Earth going on and young people being involved in the work that we do.
And it was just wonderful for those students to be able to actually get that answer back, from you guys who were on mission at the time, and you didn't just, send a short little answer back, from the Selene 1 crew. We got these really fantastic in-depths, and that's the kind of thing that will impact those students at their younger age and inspire them as they go on. So really, as we talk about what's been the impact of students, on students of having this stronger connection with analog space habitats. And there's really that sense of agency and belief, I guess, that that they can find a place in the space industry. And here where I'm based in Australia, we only recently got a space agency for real. And there are rocket companies and satellite companies, and there are a range of space industries now, and it's a real thing. And connecting with the space analog research and habitat, people who've been on these missions really helps them understand that that's a real thing now. It also means that their designs, when they're working on their designs, and you can see some pictures here, we use a 3D design tool called CoSpaces, which helps them quickly visualize their ideas and start building in the pieces. They can also then see their creation in virtual reality and walk around inside their creation. Or they can hold it. There's a merge cube that we use for augmented reality, so they can actually hold their design. And they do a much more detailed work on their bases, having had the experience. But also there's a greater love for STEM. Really, they go much further in developing their creative problem solving skills and going back and changing it and editing, even days after the class. We'll see them logging back in, etc. And there's also been a greater interest from girls. Which we've noticed. So I'm a father of 2 girls myself, and it's probably well known that traditionally a lot of STEM industries haven't been, being seen by many girls as much of a pathway. But by focusing more on, the human and the creative problem solving side of STEM, we're seeing a much greater interest from girls coming through. All right, so as far as our future plans go, just finishing up now, we have something called a smart space garden project. So with STEM Punks, we use a microbit platform, which some of you may recognize from BBC, that students can code themselves. And we make that with a garden sensor. And so we've got one of these on the way actually to be tested and tried out at High Seas, so that there's this sort of flagship project where this is in place at High Seas for missions, but students can do it themselves, in their own classroom or in their own house. They can do the same experiments and work that's being done at High Seas. So will be a fantastic direct connection. And then also we want to go to a next level of having a Space Punks student ambassador program. So identifying all the students who've really excelled and shown interest across the classes and really responded well to the connections with High Seas and Dr. Michaela, etc. and giving them opportunities to be mentored and go even further. So that's in a nutshell. That's the work that I've been doing, and then connecting with Dr. Michaela, and she has her great student programs and making as much of this available as possible. I'm going to put the link to the slides again into the chat so you can download them and look at them as well, and that will give you our contact details. I know for me, it'd be wonderful to talk to more of you. I know many people on the call here have analog habitat experience as well. You would probably have some great stuff that you could share with our students as well. We'd love to involve students in more countries as well in being in the classes and having this experience. So you may know students that you would like to share this with as well. So yeah, there's our contact details. It'd be awesome to keep in touch around this topic and theme. And thanks very much, Julio, for the chance to share it.
Yes,
yes,
wonderful.
thank you so much for having us. I saw that there were some questions also in the chat, so I'll leave you to decide how you want to organize that.
Okay, I have a question. It's about the sustainability, the economic sustainability, how to keep how to maintain the analog station, the funding, or if possible, talk a little because is also I was talking with a Brazilian student. She also asking about, but I believe there's kinds of that there's a fees to be paid to be part of a mission. And then, if possible, talk something about.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so currently we are set up like the Mars Desert Research Station, where there's a fee you have to pay to take part in a mission. The fee really just covers running everything here, obviously the food, water, and other costs, and the personnel costs in there. So it's really the most minimum fee we could have to allow people to join. But the important thing that I'm doing differently since I've become the director of High Seas is I've opened this facility up literally to anyone around the world. I'm trying to make this be as accessible as possible. Before, it used to be just the University of Hawaii and NASA. Now we've had European Space Agency crews, different university crews. Now there's a Sensoria program here, which is focusing on having majority female crews or female-led missions and LGBTQ+ communities. So by opening it up like this, more people around the world can join, but then of course we have to be able to cover our costs. So the fees are the bare minimum that we need to be able to run this facility. Sometimes we're able to get research grants. So for instance, we got a grant to run missions in collaboration with NASA. It was meant to happen this year, but because of the pandemic, it got moved to next year. Hopefully it'll be working just fine next year. And so those grants help cover the mission costs, though participants will still need to fly into Hawaii. So it really depends on the situation, but either way, yes, to keep the facility running, we do have to charge fees for the participants or the organizations running the mission.
Okay, thanks for the...
Excuse me?
Yes.
Thank you for asking my question, Professor Julio. It was actually me who was asking about the student who he was talking to. What I'd like to know is, you mentioned that volunteers can take part into the mission control. Wasn't that so, or I misunderstood? And that's open for international students. That's what I'd like to ask about. Is that done online or presential?
Yeah. As mission support, you can do both online and virtual. So you basically just need to be available over email at certain times of the day. You can eventually become Capcom and come to Hawaii and do the work here, but I ask for a certain amount of training before that. So if you are interested as a volunteer, I very happily welcome more volunteers. So I hope you were able to get down my email address. Please get it. That would be awesome. And what usually happens is I train people up for a few months, then you shadow a mission. So you basically watch a mission, but you don't participate, you just watch. And then once you get enough skill, you can start participating and go all the way up to being a captain.
All right, thank you very much. And also I'd like to tell Jonathan that I really liked your background, the video background. Amazing.
Yeah. Also, Maybe you have more two questions because I know that Michaela is very busy inside of high seas because he's starting a new mission, the sensory mission. And good luck to this new mission in high
Thank you.
seas. And then maybe you have more two questions. If everybody would like to do by your own, you can do your question.
And so you mean from the chat or?
No, can be live. Okay, in the video. Okay, there's what kind of physiological research is being done in high seas?
So physiological, there's all sorts. For instance, on the sensoria missions, they like to do research where they look at the human microbiome. So they will be doing swabbing of different parts of the body 3 different times during the mission to see how your microbes change throughout the mission. And it could be that, you know, your body is adjusting to the strange freeze-dried food you're eating, or we all kind of start sharing the same microbes because we live in such a small space. So they basically, yeah, look at how that changes throughout time. Then there's also research to look at, you know, your heart rate and things like that, how it changes throughout the day, throughout the mission. Even urine samples are taken. Sometimes in some missions, hair samples were taken because you can measure stress levels based on hair. So all sorts of things. It's not the same for every mission. It really depends on the research purposes. And of course, to do human-based research, you need special approvals. So we only allow people with the correct types of approvals to do this kind of research at high seas.
Okay, also, Aníbal is asking about if there is something like a parapsychic phenomena was if some parapsychic phenomena was documented in the lifetime of high seas, something strange related to dreams or other things.
I mean, there was no research done on this, so I can't really speak from a research point of view. But there definitely have been things that have been called the ghosts of the habitat, where some people, you know, experience kind of like a presence next to them while they were working late at night. There's some instances of people's bedroom lights flashing at night for no reason. And we don't know if that's just an electric problem or something, or why this is happening. So no one has really seen anything, but there's some strange feelings. People also tend to have strange dreams here, very vivid dreams. And what sometimes happens is people who never dream at home have crazy dreams here, or people who normally dream a lot have no dreams here. So it's a special environment. I think part of it is, you know, the person is going through such an intense experience that obviously influences the way they sleep, what they sense around them. But, you know, there's always the possibility for something else to be a factor, but it hasn't been studied as a research study.
Okay, you're wonderful. Yes, thanks so much for your also the contribution and participation of Jonathan Nalder, and also Michaela Musilova for to be with us, giving a special moment for the Space Habitat event in the first edition. We hope be possible will be repeated during the next years, I hope, and have each day a broader audience. And thanks so much. And then and then in this case we are free because I talked with Jonathan in private. You have your appointments, and then we'll be here only more maybe for more 5 minutes just to evaluate the event and with the audience. But you are free to uh, to take your responsibilities, okay? And thanks so much, Jonathan and Michaela, to be with us.
And well done, Julio. Well done, Julio, on the events. Fantastic.
Okay, thanks.
Take care.
He's amazing.
Yes, thanks so much.